You know, my dear, sometimes life shows you things you can never unsee, things that change the way your heart beats and the way your soul trusts. It all started one early morning, when the mist still hugged the trees and the world was quiet. I had woken up before dawn, as I often do, to go for my morning walk near the lake behind our home. It was always my place of peace, the soft lapping of water, the birds just beginning to stir. But that morning, peace had other plans. As I turned the bend in the path, I saw a figure by the water's edge. At first I thought it was just someone tossing rubbish, or maybe skipping stones. But then, I recognized the coat, the dark blue one with the gold buttons, my daughter-in-law's coat. She was standing there, holding a heavy-looking suitcase. My heart hesitated. I was about to call out to her, but something stopped me. The way she moved wasn't casual, her body was tense, her hands were trembling. Then, before I could take another step, she heaved the suitcase into the lake with all her strength. The sound it made, that deep, hollow splash, cut through the silence like thunder. She stood there, staring at the ripples for a long time, as if making sure it sank. And when she finally turned around, her face, oh my dear, her face looked pale and hollow, like someone running from a shadow only they could see. She didn't see me. She just walked away quickly, her head low, disappearing down the trail. I stood frozen for a moment. My mind told me to go home, to pretend I hadn't seen anything, to let it go, but my heart told me something was wrong. I couldn't breathe until I knew what was inside that suitcase, so I waited. I watched the lake, marking where the ripples had died. When I was sure she was gone, I went closer. The water was cold, and my hands shook as I reached for a branch to fish it out. The suitcase had started to sink, but part of it was still visible, caught against some reeds near the bank. I pulled and struggled until, finally, I dragged it onto the muddy shore. The lock was broken. It must have snapped when she threw it. I hesitated before opening it. I remember whispering, "Lord, give me strength," and when I unlatched it, my blood ran cold. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of my son. Some torn, some burned at the edges. His clothes were there too, shredded and stained. And on top of everything lay a framed picture of the two of them on their wedding day. Glass shattered, his face scratched out. I felt my knees give out beneath me, my breath caught in my throat. That sips when I saw it. A note tucked under the frame. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was her handwriting. Just 3 words. He said'll never leave. My dear, I don't remember how long I sat there. The sun rose, turning the lake golden, but I felt nothing. The world around me was alive, yet everything inside me had gone still. I wanted to run to my son immediately, but fear gripped me, fear of what I might find, fear of what this meant. When I finally reached home, my son was sitting at the table, his eyes distant, his face bruised. He didn't look up when I called his name. I touched his shoulder gently and said, "I saw her." He froze. Tears welled up in his eyes before he whispered, "Mama, I was going to tell you." He told me everything, how she had become possessive, controlling, angry, how every time he tried to leave, she'd threatened to hurt herself or him. That morning, they had fought again. She had packed his things, and hers, and left the house. He didn't know what she was planning to do. I listened, my heart breaking. My dear, sometimes love doesn't break in loud ways. Sometimes it shatters quietly, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but fear. My son was alive, but what she had done to his spirit would take much longer to heal. We went to the police together that day. They took the suitcase, the photographs, the note, and though justice came later, in its slow, heavy way, the image of that morning never left me. The sound of that suitcase hitting the water still echoes in my heart. Now, whenever I walk by that lake, I stop for a moment and watch the ripples on the surface. They remind me how easily peace can hide pain beneath it. What looks calm on the outside can hold storms deep below. So, my dear, let this be your lesson. Love should never make you afraid. If someone tries to own you, to cage your freedom, to silence your voice, that's not love, that's control dressed as care. And if you ever find yourself near a lake of secrets, remember this: the truth, no matter how long it's been buried, will always rise to the surface. Always. You know, my dear, people often talk about a mother's intuition like it's just some fancy word for worry. They call it overthinking, or being dramatic, or too emotional. But let me tell you something. A mother's intuition is not noise, it's music. It's the quiet song your soul hums when something is wrong, even before your mind can understand it. It's the whisper that says, "Look again," when everyone else says, "It's nothing." It's not magic. It's love that's learned to listen. That morning I didn't plan to follow her. I had no reason to think anything was wrong, but something in my chest felt heavy, like a hand gently pressing down, warning me not to ignore it. Maybe it was the way she'd been looking lately. Restless eyes, short answers, a shadow behind her smile. I couldn't explain it, but my heart wouldn't let me stay inside. So I wrapped my shawl, slipped on my shoes, and followed that quiet nudge that said, "Go for a walk." I didn't know it then, but that simple act, that small obedience to the voice inside me, was what led me to the truth. When I saw her at the lake, I felt a chill run through me, though the air wasn't cold. She didn't see me, but I saw her. Every motion, every tremble, every secret she was trying to bury beneath the surface of that water. And my heart, oh my heart, started pounding in a way I can't describe. It wasn't fear for myself. It was fear for something much bigger. A mother's heart always knows when her child's in danger. It's like your spirit steps outside your body and says, something's not right. I remember standing there, hidden by the trees, my breath caught between disbelief and dread. I wanted to shout her name, but my body wouldn't move. And when that suitcase hit the water, I knew, without opening it, without asking, that something sacred was being lost. I didn't know what was inside, but my soul already mourned it. That's what intuition does. It doesn't need proof to know pain. After she left, I stood there for a long while, just listening to the sound of the water. It was like the lake was whispering secrets, and I was afraid to hear them, but something in me, that same quiet instinct that had brought me there, wouldn't let me turn away. It told me, "Mae, you've come this far. You can't stop now." So I listened again, this time not with my ears, but with my heart, and my heart said, "Pull it out." When I touched that suitcase, the water was icy, biting through my skin, but I didn't care. I had to know. My hands trembled, my breath came shallow, but I kept going, and when it opened, when I saw what was inside, my blood froze. My whole body turned cold, but my heart burned. Because in that moment, I realized my intuition hadn't been warning me of danger, it had been guiding me toward truth. Painful truth, yes, but truth nonetheless. You see, my dear, that's the thing about a mother's intuition. It doesn't always lead you to comfort. Sometimes, it leads you to heartbreak, but it leads you there because some truths need to be found before they destroy everything in silence. If I had stayed home that morning, if I had ignored that gentle pull in my spirit, I might have lost my son completely, not just his body, but his will, his spirit, his hope. People say, seeing is believing, but a mother's heart knows before her eyes do. It sees beyond the smiles, beyond the words, beyond what others pretend is fine. And the saddest part, we often doubt ourselves, because the world teaches us not to trust what we feel. But my dear, feelings, the true ones, are not weakness, they are warnings. That morning, standing by that lake, I learned something I will never forget. Intuition is love's voice speaking softly through fear. It's not dramatic, it's not foolish, it's divine. And if you ever feel it, that quiet stirring inside, that small unease that tells you something's wrong, please, my dear, don't silence it. Don't push it away because you're afraid of being wrong. Because one day, that voice might save someone you love. So when your heart speaks, listen. Even if it whispers, even if it shakes you, even if it leads you to places you wish you didn't have to go, because the truth is always better than the darkness that grows in silence. And the heart, a mother's heart, always knows. You know, my dear, I've learned something over the years. Evil doesn't always come with a dark cloud or a storm. Sometimes, it wears perfume and a gentle smile. It laughs at your table, helps wash your dishes, and calls you mom with the sweetest voice you've ever heard. But behind those soft eyes, something else lives, something cold, something waiting. Evil, you see, doesn't always look like the monster we imagine. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, dressed in kindness. When my son brought her home, she was lovely, polite, well-spoken, always offering to help. She had this charm that made everyone lean in when she spoke. I wanted to love her right away, because that's what a mother does. We want our children to find happiness, to be cherished, and at first, it seemed like she did just that. But slowly, very slowly, small things began to whisper otherwise. You know the kind, the way she'd look at him when she thought no one was watching, the way she'd tighten her hand just a bit too hard when he spoke to another woman, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. It's easy to ignore those whispers when you want to believe the best in someone. We tell ourselves, oh, she's just tired, or she's shy. We smooth over the cracks because admitting them would mean admitting something ugly could be living right in our home. And so, I ignored it. I let her smiles convince me. But deep down, my spirit was restless. You can sense when something's not right. It's that quiet feeling you push away when everything looks fine on the surface. Evil has a way of blending in. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't strike first, it studies you, learns you, waits for the perfect moment. That's what she did. She learned what made my son happy, what made him weak, what made him stay quiet. She wrapped herself around him, not in love, but in control. And little by little, she began to change the way he looked at me. She wanted him all to herself. You could see it in the way she'd interrupt, correct, or speak for him, as if she owned his voice. And my boy, bless his heart, he thought it was love. Love doesn't hurt you, my dear. Love doesn't isolate you. Love doesn't make you feel small. When it does, it's not love anymore. It's possession. That's what I saw growing between them. And it frightened me, because I knew once that kind of darkness takes root, it's hard to pull it out. But how do you tell your son the woman he adores is wearing a mask? How do you tell him that what he thinks is devotion is actually control? He would have laughed, maybe even gotten angry. So I stayed quiet, watching from the edges, hoping I was wrong. But the truth has a way of showing itself, even when you try to ignore it. There were days when my son came home quieter, his eyes dimmer. I asked him what was wrong, and he'd smile and say, "Nothing, Mom, just tired." But a mother knows the difference between tired and broken. I saw bruises once, small ones he brushed off as accidents. My heart cracked that day, because I realized the evil I'd sensed had grown bolder. It was no longer hiding, it was showing its teeth. Evil hides behind a smile because it knows kindness disarms people. It counts on your goodness, your politeness, your unwillingness to see the bad in someone. And that's exactly what she used against me. She'd bring me flowers, call every few days, act the perfect daughter-in-law, all while slowly tearing him apart behind closed doors. That's how manipulation works, my dear. It builds trust before it breaks it. I saw her that day at the lake, calm, composed, like she was just doing something ordinary. Not a flicker of guilt crossed her face. That's when I truly understood, some people wear kindness the way others wear makeup, to hide what's underneath. And no matter how pretty they look on the outside, the rot eventually seeps through. So now, when I meet people, I don't listen only to their words or their smiles. I listen to their energy, what my spirit feels when they enter the room, because you can fake a laugh, but you can't fake peace. You can pretend to love, but you can't hide malice forever. Evil often hides behind a smile, my dear, but love, real love, shines from the soul. And once you've seen the difference, you never forget it. You know, my dear, people think that once something is hidden, it's gone. They think that if you throw it far enough, bury it deep enough, or keep quiet long enough, it'll disappear. But the truth doesn't work like that. The truth has a heartbeat. It lives. It breathes. And no matter how far down you push it, it will always find a way to rise back up. Just like that suitcase in the lake, heavy with secrets, desperate to sink, but the water kept pushing it back toward the surface. That's what truth does. It refuses to stay buried. I remember standing there, the ripples slowly spreading across the water after she'd thrown it in. For a moment, everything was silent. Too silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, my breath catching like the air didn't want to move. She thought it was over, that the water would swallow her secret whole. But I saw it, that suitcase bobbing up, fighting to stay seen. Like it was screaming, "You can't hide me." My knees went weak because I understood something then. The truth doesn't belong to us. We can try to cover it, lie about it, drown it, but it always finds someone brave enough to uncover it. And that day, that someone was me. You see, my dear, lies are heavy. They don't sink gracefully. They drag everything else down with them. Every deceit, every hidden act, every cruel word tucked away. They build weight in your soul. And the thing about water is, it reflects. You can look down and see yourself. But if there's something wrong beneath the surface, it distorts your reflection. That's how life works too. You can pretend all you want, but the truth always changes the way you're seen. When I pulled that suitcase from the water, my hands were trembling, but my heart was steady. I knew whatever was inside would change everything. It wasn't curiosity that drove me, it was the knowing that God doesn't show you something by accident. If the truth is meant for you, you'll find it, even if you're not ready for it. And when that lock gave way, and I opened it, the air around me changed. It felt colder, heavier. Like the whole world was holding its breath with me. What I saw inside didn't just break my heart, it shattered the way I saw everything I thought I knew. That's when I realized something else. My dear, people don't hide the truth because it's ugly. They hide it because it's powerful. Because once it's out, it can destroy lies, burn down the walls they built, and expose the darkness they hoped would stay quiet. But power like that doesn't stay still. It stirs. It waits for the right moment to rise. And rise, it did. The more I tried to make sense of what I'd found, the clearer things became, all the small things that hadn't made sense before, all the uneasy silences, all the strained smiles, they all led here. The truth was never hiding, it was speaking the whole time. I just hadn't been ready to listen. That's the funny thing about truth, my dear. It doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just waits, patiently, for your heart to open enough to accept it. Later, when I confronted her, she denied it all. Oh, she was calm, smooth, practiced, but her eyes betrayed her. You can lie with your mouth, but never with your eyes. There's always that flicker, that small flash of fear, when someone realizes their secret is no longer safe. I saw it in her that day, and I knew she was drowning, not in water, but in her own lies. Truth, no matter how deep you bury it, will always float. It might take days, months, or even years, but it will find its way back to the light, and when it does, it doesn't just reveal what was hidden, it cleanses everything around it. It exposes, it heals, and sometimes it destroys. But destruction, my dear, is sometimes the first step to freedom. When I stood there, watching that suitcase drift toward me, I didn't just see a secret coming undone. I saw justice moving quietly through the water. I saw God's hand at work saying, "Enough." And though the truth that came out hurt, oh, it hurt so deeply, it also brought clarity, painful clarity, yes, but pure. So now whenever I think of that day, I remember this. You can hide your actions, you can silence your guilt, you can bury your sins, but the truth has wings, and one way or another, it will always find its way back to the surface. You know, my dear, love is a beautiful thing. When it's true, it's soft, patient, and kind. It lifts you up when life tries to pull you down. But sometimes, what people call love isn't love at all. It's a hunger to own, to control, to possess. And that kind of love, it doesn't hold your hand, it holds your throat. It doesn't warm your heart, it squeezes it. I've seen it before, but never like I saw it between my son and his wife. What started as affection slowly turned into a cage. At first, I thought it was sweet. She wanted to be around him all the time, always knowing where he was, who he was with, what he was doing. You tell yourself that's just care, concern. You say, oh, she loves him so much, she can't bear to be apart. But love doesn't chain you, It lets you breathe. It gives you wings, not walls. Still, I ignored the signs, because every mother wants to believe her child is happy. We'd sit together at dinner, and I'd see her rest her hand on his arm possessively, not lovingly, but as if to say, "He's mine." As the months passed, she began to change him. I don't mean in the way that people grow together, I mean she reshaped him, like clay under her fingers. His laughter grew quieter, his eyes heavier. He used to visit me every weekend, help me in the garden, tell me about his dreams. But then, one by one, those visits stopped. When I called, she'd answer instead, always polite but distant, always with some reason he couldn't come. "He's resting, Mother. He's busy, Mother." But I could hear something behind her voice. Pride, like she'd won some silent battle I didn't know we were fighting. I remember one evening, when I finally saw him again, he looked hollow, smiled, but his smile didn't light his face the way it used to. I asked him if he was happy. He said, "Of course, Mom," but his eyes, oh, his eyes told a different story. They looked trapped. That's when I began to understand. Love, when twisted, becomes a weapon. It isolates, it controls, it convinces you that without it you are nothing. And my poor boy, he believed that. She had wrapped him so tightly in her world that he forgot where he ended, and she began. He couldn't speak freely without glancing at her first, as if seeking permission. If I mentioned something from his childhood, she'd interrupt, answer for him, steer the conversation back to herself. It was subtle at first, but over time, I could feel her walls closing in around him. I once overheard them arguing. Her voice was sharp, filled with venom that didn't match the sweet woman she showed the world. "You don't need anyone but me," she hissed. "I'm the only one who truly loves you." And he, my gentle boy, just stood there, silent, defeated. I wanted to storm in, to pull him away, but I stopped myself. Because sometimes, people trapped in love like that can't be pulled out. They have to find their own way, or else they'll just run back to the very chains you're trying to break. And that, my dear, is the cruelest part. Possessive love convinces its victims that control is protection, that jealousy is passion, that pain is proof of devotion. It's not. Love should never make you smaller. It should never make you fear, speaking, laughing, or dreaming. But when love turns dark, it feeds on silence. It thrives on obedience. And it always, always demands sacrifice, of freedom, of joy, of self. I used to pray every night that my son would open his eyes, that he'd remember who he was before her shadow fell over him. But people lost in possessive love don't realize they're being smothered. They mistake it for closeness, and the one doing the smothering, well, they call it care. They don't even see the destruction they cause, because in their heart they believe that to love someone means to own them. The saddest thing, my dear, is that sometimes the people who love us most end up being the ones who hurt us deepest, not out of hate, but out of fear. Her fear of losing him made her dangerous. She couldn't stand the idea of him belonging to anyone else, not even to his own mother. That fear grew, poisoned her mind, until she crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. So, if you ever find yourself in a love that feels like a cage, listen to me, child, that's not love. Real love doesn't bind. It frees. It doesn't silence. It listens. It doesn't break you down to keep you close. It builds you up so you can fly, even if flying means flying away. Because love that imprisons isn't love at all. It's fear pretending to be affection. And fear, my dear, can destroy even the purest heart if you let it. You know, my dear, people think strength is loud. They think it's shouting, fighting, breaking things to prove you're not afraid. But real strength, it's quiet. It's the kind that trembles but still stands. It's the voice that cracks but still speaks. It's the heart that keeps beating, even when it's breaking into 1,000 pieces. That's the kind of strength I had to find the day I faced the darkness that had crept into my family. I didn't want to see it, didn't want to believe it, but sometimes life doesn't ask for your permission, it demands your courage. When I found that suitcase, when the truth spilled out before me like poison, I could have run. Every part of me wanted to. My knees went weak, my breath came short, and my mind screamed, "No, this can't be real." But the thing about darkness is, if you turn your back on it, it only grows stronger, and I couldn't let that happen. I had to face it, not because I was fearless, but because my love for my son was stronger than my fear. I remember sitting on that muddy shore, my hands still shaking, staring at what that water had tried to hide. The world felt like it stopped spinning for a moment. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg God to make it untrue, but instead, I sat still. I breathed. I prayed, because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's gathering your thoughts, your courage, your strength for what comes next. I thought of my boy, my sweet, gentle son, and the pain he must have carried, the kind that no one saw, not even me. That thought cut deeper than anything. It's easy to blame others for evil, but harder to face your own guilt for not seeing it sooner. That's when I realized, strength isn't just about confronting others, it's about confronting yourself. I had to forgive myself for every warning I ignored, every uneasy feeling I brushed away, because guilt, if you let it, can chain you to the past, but I couldn't afford to stay chained. Not when my son needed me. When I went home that night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, holding my rosary, whispering prayers between tears. "Lord," I said, "I'm not brave. I'm just a mother. But if you give me the strength, I'll do what I must." And you know what? Strength came, not like thunder, but like morning light, quiet and steady. I didn't stop crying, but I could breathe again, and that breath, that small piece of calm, was enough to move forward. The next day, I went to confront her. My hands shook the entire way there, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. But I reminded myself, strength doesn't mean you don't feel fear, it means you walk with it anyway. I looked her in the eye and said her name softly, not with anger, but with something heavier. Truth. She didn't expect that. Evil doesn't know what to do with calm. It feeds on chaos, on shouting, on fear. But when you stand still in your truth, it begins to crumble. She tried to lie, of course, tried to twist my words, play innocent, but I'd already seen too much. I didn't need her confession. I needed her to see that I wasn't afraid anymore. Because once you stop fearing someone's darkness, their power over you ends, and that's what happened that day. I took back my power, not by shouting, not by revenge, but by refusing to look away. Later, when the police came and the truth unfolded, everyone said I was brave, but I wasn't brave. I was broken. The difference was, I chose to stand up anyway. You see, courage isn't about not breaking, it's about breaking open and still choosing to heal. It's about saying, I'm hurt, but I'm not done. That day I faced more than just her evil. I faced the part of myself that wanted to pretend it wasn't there. And once I faced it, I realized something powerful. Darkness loses its power when you shine even the smallest light on it. My tears, my trembling hands, my cracked voice, they were all light, and they were enough. So my dear, don't ever think you have to be fearless to be strong. Don't wait for courage to come fully formed. Sometimes it comes in pieces, in each breath you take when you want to scream, in every step you take when your legs want to give out. Strength isn't the absence of pain, it's the decision to keep going despite it. That's what I learned by that lake. You can't run from darkness, you have to face it, not because you're unafraid, but because love demands it, because someone has to be the light. And if not you, then who? You know, my dear, after everything that happened, the lies, the fear, the heartbreak, I sat alone one evening and asked myself, what was it all for? What was the lesson buried beneath all that pain? And as the sun went down and the house grew quiet, the answer came to me, soft as a whisper. True love frees, it never binds. Those words settled in my heart like a balm, because for the first time, I truly understood what love is and what it isn't. Love is meant to lift, not chain, to guide, not control, but what my son lived through was not love. It was possession dressed up as devotion. It was someone trying to own his spirit, not cherish it. I used to think that love meant holding on no matter what, forgiving endlessly, sacrificing without limit. But now I see that sometimes love means letting go, letting people face their truth, even when it breaks you to watch. I watched that girl twist the meaning of love until it became something dark. She said she loved him, but what she really loved was power. The power to decide when he smiled, when he spoke, when he could even see me. She thought that if she kept him close enough, if she cut everyone else away, he'd never leave. But that's not love. That's fear pretending to care. And fear, when fed long enough, turns cruel. When I found that suitcase, when I saw what she had done, I realized she hadn't just destroyed my son's peace, she destroyed her own soul. Because when you try to control love, you kill it. You can't lock up something that's meant to fly and expect it to stay beautiful. It withers, it fades, it fights back. My boy tried to love her, tried to heal her even, but love can't fix what doesn't want to be fixed. You can pour your heart into someone, but if all they know is taking, you'll end up empty. I sat with that thought for a long time, my dear. I thought about all the ways we confuse love with need. Need says, I can't live without you. Love says, I want you to live, even if it's not with me. Need clings. Love releases. And that's the hardest thing for a heart like mine to accept, that sometimes the purest form of love is the one that sets someone free, even if it means you have to let them walk away. I remember the day after the truth came out. I went to the lake again. The police tape was gone, the air was still, and the water reflected the sky so perfectly it looked like heaven had bent down to touch it. I stood there and whispered a prayer. I asked God to teach me how to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine, because holding on to anger, even righteous anger, only keeps you bound to the pain. And forgiveness, my dear, is just another kind of freedom. You see, when love is real, it doesn't demand control, it doesn't suffocate, it doesn't make you small to feel big, it allows space for mistakes, for growth, for individuality. True love says, I see you for who you are, and that's enough. That's what I wish my son had known sooner. That's what I wish I had taught him more clearly. That love is not about staying, it's about being safe enough to stay. And when love turns dangerous, when it demands your silence, your submission, or your spirit, it's no longer love. It's a prison with lace curtains. As I stood there by that lake, I made myself a promise. I said, May, you will not let this darkness define what love means to you. And I kept that promise. Because love is too sacred to be twisted by one person's brokenness. The kind of love that God teaches us. It's forgiving but not foolish. Kind but not blind. It says, I love you, but also I love me enough to walk away from your destruction. So, my dear, if you ever find yourself in love that feels heavy, love that makes you question your worth, your safety, your joy, remember this: true love frees. It never binds. It doesn't make you lose yourself. It helps you find yourself. It doesn't silence your voice. It teaches you to speak softer, truer. Love isn't about control. It's about care. It's not about ownership. It's about partnership. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to let go, to step back, to breathe, and to choose peace over pain. Because love, when it's real, doesn't demand that you drown just to prove you can stay afloat. It's the hand that lifts you up, the light that guides you home, the peace that whispers, you are safe now. And that, my dear, is the only kind of love worth keeping.